Just going to request Gopal sir to kind of just do a quick intro of Bharat and then we'll get started.
Okay. Good afternoon. Uh, can you guys hear me? Yes or no? Okay. Uh, I think you guys have read the intro of Bharat. The biggest thing I can say is a good friend, and it's really, really nice of him to come in. And Bharat is a senior partner in Anand and Anand, one of the leading companies in Chennai for IP protection. So my request to you would be, please do take advantage of the fact that Bharat is spending time with us here. So I would now hand it over to Bharat and let him start the proceedings. Thanks, Bharat.
Thank you. First of all, I would thank each of you to be here in time, because that's the most important part of any startup, to be on time, on promised time. But before that, I would only say that I can personally promise this is going to be a very interactive session. So you can stop me anywhere. If I can possibly plunge in to ask some questions as well. So feel free to do that. Um, Can someone volunteer and say what, according to you, is in intellectual property? Anyone can volunteer? I'm not going to judge you, not mark you. Anyone? Non-tangible property. Excellent. So I would absolutely concur with you and just say that intellectual property is nothing but any physical property which you have is created physically. Like what I'm holding is physical. But if you take this physical property and look at it, it's got a unique shape. Possibly the wireless holder which I have here might have some 10,000 different shapes, but this has got a unique shape. So that itself is one form of IP. The technology which works inside that, which is probably Bluetooth or other forms of wirelessness, is a technology along with some IC which is running inside, and that is possibly patents. The looks of it is designs. I mean, I'm going to look at it from a different perspective, but from any product or process which you start the day and end the day, you will have an intangible property in it. Whether it is the spectacles you wear, whether it is the shoes you wear, whether it is the computers you use, or even a toothpaste which you brush with, to come to think of it. And from a startup community, I would say how many, I'm going to ask a random question, I know the answer, but how many of you believe in your current situation as a startup, you have physical properties now? When I mean physical properties, I'm talking about factory, machine, raw materials, so on and so forth. How many currently? Okay, that's less than 10%. What is the percentage of valuation you will possibly have if you say that your startup is today worth, say, 50 lakhs of rupees? What is the percentile of these raw materials? Anyone who answered to the positive before? Very small. The reason is very simple. Whether it's a startup or any other corporation, most of the valuation which happens for that startup or the business is always towards intangible property. And that intangible property, in one way or the other, is called intellectual property. You can have different buckets of it. I've got about 60 slides and a good 2.5 hours to cover up. So when you today say that you are worth 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 10 million, 1 billion, that's a notional concept based on intangibles, whether it is goodwill, whether it is reputation, future prospects of sale, value of your brand, value of your patents, value of your designs, because you don't have physical properties which are valued anymore. These are only notional valuations which go around, and I keep telling everyone the valuation is more of an art than a science. No one knows how to value companies. It's only if you take the same company and give it to three different valuers, they will come up with 20-30% variations. So let me go on with a few slides on what each of it looks like, right? So this is what I promised to cover much before I started. If you want to identify the properties, I've got one in black and one in green. On the left side would be what the popular lawyers like us would like to use. On the right side is possibly what each of you would know it as, right? Brands are nothing but trademarks in our life, and I have slides for each of these as well. And second comes patents. Patents can either be product patents or process patents, but these are basically inventions, those which were not existing before either as a product or as a process. Brands need not necessarily be non-existent, because you can have a fruit called apple which became a brand later. But in patents, you can't have a product or a process existing before because of certain requirements which each of that has. And then designs. Designs is something on the visual appeal. It's nothing to do with functionality. It's nothing to do with how it works. Design is all about how it looks, either in two-dimensional or three-dimensional form. Sorry, I'll just step back. And then comes copyright. Some of you in the software and hardware industry would know more about this, because in India there are only certain categories of software which are patentable. We will come to that in a bit. But largely, copyright is the widest form of intellectual property because of the sheer number of subject matters it covers. Copyright covers photograph, painting, sculpture, literary works as in books. Under literary work you have software programs as well. And you have movies, you have music. I mean, the count is limitless under copyright regime. And then comes geographical indications. It's good to know what geographical indications are. From amongst this community, none of you are involved in it. It's more traditional. It's like where your tea comes from Darjeeling, only that 7 hills in Darjeeling can call itself Darjeeling tea. Or your saris which come from one city of Kanjivaram, we will call it Kanjivaram saris. Or Namakkal eggs. Those of you who are from Tamil Nadu would possibly know that city is known for making eggs, and only that city where that eggs are produced, you can call them Namakkal. Early on, you should more know about trade secrets, because trade secrets and confidential information, I'll put both those into one bucket, is when you have a wonderful idea, a lot of times at early stage you are very keen in sharing this with a lot of persons. But you are very scared whether your own potential investor or potential partner or potential supplier or any outsourced agent would run away with it. So that's one key critical component on what do you do with trade secrets and confidential information, especially when you don't have a law in India. Fortunately for each of the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have separate laws governing registration, protection. If someone copies, what happens? But for trade secrets and confidential information, which is a very unknown bucket, there is no law for us. We will get to that shortly. And then is the information technology world. I'm loosely calling it domain names here, but it's the online presence of what you do with it. So confidential information is also databases. I'm just giving you a short example of a client list. Luckily for India, we do have a Data Protection Act, which is coming very, very soon on the GDPR angle, but it's very unlike GDPR. I can have a whole day seminar on that on a different day. So when you come to think of a brand, I will only say brands are as important as our own names. In a big crowded market, it's like, how do you want to name your child to stand out? A lot of very innovative names start coming out in the modern era. When in my, what do I say, age, and when I was born about 4 decades back, it was only regular Bharat, Arun, Ramanujam, some names like that. But if you see modern names, they are fusing father and mother's name into one which was non-existing before. The reason why I'm harping on this, in brands, the minute you start showing yourself as a brand to the world, the easier the word is, the more difficult it is to protect. It's inversely proportional. The reason is, if someone were to copy your brand, they can easily say it's a known word. I picked it up from online. You didn't create it. So if you are entitled to use it, so can I. So I'm just going to give you some basic examples. When you wake up in the morning and start brushing, you have a brand called Colgate. If you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, but I have used Palpudi also. Palpudi in Tamil means tooth powder. And that's name also Gopal. So, and then we do have service marks, which most of you might get into, or some of you might get into, like software as services, or I don't have a physical product, I'm going to render only services. Like Uber or Fast Track, they don't own any cars, but they only render a service with a mobile application. That is also a brand, that is also a trademark. And then comes other forms of service marks, which probably own the network, also give you a phone, and also give you the service of the phones as well. So that can also be a brand. And then can be brands which are nothing to do with service, nothing to do with products, but probably the service is entertainment. That's called Chennai Super Kings. You have an affiliation towards it, whether it is Rajasthan Royal or whoever team you want to, or Manchester United. The brand or the team is worth billions of dollars. They don't have a traditional way of rendition of services or selling of any products, but still they are brands. And then comes hybrid brands, which are both product and service. So if you go to Hyundai and buy a car, they not only sell the car, but also have after sales services. So it's like SaaS, you not only prepare the product, but you also render the services of maintenance and ongoing and improvements of the product as well. And when two companies come together, they will have a hybrid brand, which is called Maruti and Suzuki, or Hero and Honda. They come together when they want to part ways. Hero takes Hero, Honda takes Honda. Right? So that's also a hybrid brand. And then comes brands which are owned by the government. It can be a brand like Arvind here, or if you go up north, it's called Mother Dairy, or you go to Karnataka, it's called Nandini, but they are all run by the milk federations. Amul is also one, which is owned by a company called Gujarat Cooperative, GCCF, one of the companies. And then you have certification marks, where the owner of the certification mark does not manufacture the product. The owner of the marks, only service they do is to test the product and say, I certify that it qualifies all the criteria I have set down. Incidentally, the brand Wi-Fi, if at all you didn't know Wi-Fi was a brand, was actually created by 23 companies. You go online and actually check it for academic interest. It's actually a consortium of all the tech companies who came together and agreed on a common platform, which is called Standard Essential Platform, for all companies to use the Bluetooth platform and wireless fidelity, that it became Wi-Fi as well. So that is called certification marks. And then you have marks from far Anyone can guess what brand that is? Yeah, so that's a shape mark. Over a period of time, I'm sorry, I think it's mine. Forgot to, just give me a 30 seconds to put it on silent. So from far, each of you can know what the brand is. You don't need to have a written brand there. Over a period of time, you will possibly see that a car coming from far is Ferrari because it looks red and it's got a airline feature and so on and so forth. So the looks of it or the shape of it can also graduate to be a brand eventually. And then when you close your eyes and hear a jingle or a music, you can also understand that it comes from a particular brand name. So pardon my really bad voice. I'm not cut out for singing jingles, but if I say tin tin tidin, everyone knows it's Britannia. I don't have to write it down anywhere. Even if it comes on radio, I know it's a brand, so you can have a sound mark also. The last funny part is smell mark, where if you are wearing, if you are playing tennis on a hard court, but you want to get reminded about grass court, there are some company which actually started off selling tennis balls with smell of grass. And they branded the smell of grass as a smell mark for the tennis ball. I mean, those are all futuristic, high-tech brands, but we can concentrate on the traditional ones. So basically, they can be words or labels. It can just be a symbol. Everyone knows from far that's a Montblanc pen. Any lady or gentleman who wants to keep it, they would know from far that it's a brand, so you don't need to put a name there. Or it can be a trade dress as well. Those are restaurants which come out with themes and then go about franchising those themes in different parts of the world. You walk into a particular restaurant, you know by the red-green combinations, you know it's red and yellow combination, you know it's McDonald's. So when you keep going there, you know that the trade dress, the inside of a restaurant is also protected. So as I said, early on, when you are a startup and you want to pick up a brand, it's very, very difficult for you to think of a brand. So the easiest thing you would do is probably pick up the easiest of words, because you might be thinking that it's easy to go and market it. But in our side of the world, which is called the lawyer or the legal world, it's a nightmare. You would possibly invest 6 months or 6 years into brands which are on the low side of distinctiveness. This is a scale which I invented over a period of time. It's very easy to go and market that I am coming from supercomputers. But if a second guy supercomputer comes, say in Noida, which is far from here, and you want to stop him, who will win? Any guesses? Will you be able to stop another supercomputer? A definite no. Because super is such a bad brand that anyone can use it. Or if it is called Bharat Computers, he can make it as Super Bharat Computers and he can get away by using super. So I would encourage you to go towards the right side. In South, there was a soap brand called Power which was introduced 5 years back. Power means it's a powerful soap. It's a detergent soap or a beauty soap. It's got a lot of power to clean you. It's descriptive, but after 5-10 years of use, it will become a brand. Until then, it can't be a brand. So early on, if someone copies Power, it will be very difficult for you to stop. The midway and the right side section is much better brands. For example, there used to be a brand called Sundrop. I don't know whether it's still in the market. I don't see it. I do go shopping on Sundays, but I don't see it in Nilgiris at least. It's still there? Okay. Sundrop is nothing but a drop of sunflower oil. Right? It makes you think. I call it a suggestive brand. It suggests something, but it does not describe the thing directly. So it's much better and easier for lawyers to help you stop copiers. But if you go and use arbitrary marks, say Apple for computers or Stag for umbrellas, these are known words, but they have nothing to do with the business, product or service. And last but not the least are invented words. Invented words, no one can mess around with this. Kodak does not mean anything in any language. Samsung has no meaning in Indian language, though it means the rising sun in Korean. If someone were to copy Samsung today, I'll be very surprised. But there are innovative copiers who will say, I'm Sampath and Sons, I'm Samsung. I mean, there was a case, SAMSON. It's also a lighting company, an electrical fitting company based in Chennai. SAMSON. So, moving on to patents, I'm sure that a lot of you would like me to concentrate more on this. I'll have an introductory slide and come to this on a later stage in a deeper note. Patents are nothing but inventions. It has to be either a product patent or a process patent. But the three cardinal rules, as you see on the slide, are that it should not have been existing in any part of the world. If you find a product or a process, say in Cayman Islands, or in Macau, or in Nepal, you can't take a defense and say, hey, it's new to India. It has to be having an inventive step or an invention, which is novelty and non-existing. It means that it is non-existing in any part of the world, not just India. So when you file an application for a patent in India before the Indian Patent Office, the search which the Indian Patent Office will do and has been doing is not only the Indian patents, but the patents filed anywhere in the world, and not only just patents. It can be a research paper in IIT Madras or in Tokyo Research Technology, and put it up in public domain, available for someone to look at in some other language also. So if two persons happen to strike the same invention in two different parts of the world, and both of them publish or both of them apply, whoever applies first, whoever publishes first, will kill all subsequent claimants or all subsequent inventors. Right? Utility is also one important step, and that's where some of the software requirements, if at all there are some software product or SaaS players here, for you to file patent applications, utility requirement in the Indian patent system is something which is a big issue. We call it the 3K issue. Section 3 of the Patents Act lists out what are all not patentable. It clearly says what are all not patentable. You might have heard about the Novartis decision where it says 3D. If you find a new use of an existing substance, you will not get a patent. That's 3D, unless you show efficacy or improved efficacy. That's what the pharmaceutical industry was suffering under the Novartis decision. Similarly, in the software industry, 3K says algorithms and computer programs per se, the stress is on the word per se, is not patentable. Per se is what you need utility for. So if it's an embedded software which is completely new and it marries a hardware requirement, we can get over that per se disability. We will come to that on a different slide or a different. Brilliant. All of it. So what happens is, patent system is a quid pro quo. the government gives you an exclusive right in return for you telling them what you have invented. So the other system in which you can protect your invention is keeping it as a confidential information. Like the famous cola syrup from Coca-Cola, they have not patented it, but they have kept it in the pocket as a confidential information. On the other side of the spectrum is when you file a patent, you need to disclose the entire methodology of what the invention is all about. What you need not disclose is the best known method for being most efficacious in that system. So you can say A plus B minus C leads to this, but you don't have to mention the timing between A plus B. Correct. It can be an indicative methodology on the ingredients used, but you would possibly know the best working method, which need not be disclosed to get a patent. As long as these criteria are satisfied, that is still kept as a confidential information. So even if you disclose and it gets published through the patent mechanism, a person to come out with an equivalent workable product might not have the benefit. It's not a pharmaceutical case where you disclose the product as being a chemical compound which can be manufactured in more than one method. But if it's a non-chemical, mechanical process or other processes, the best known process need not be disclosed, but the process broadly needs to be disclosed, all of it. Absolutely. That's where your claim drafting, as I would be talking about it in a minute, is patent is nothing but a techno-legal document. A techno-legal document means an inventor sits with a patent attorney, discloses with the patent attorney that this is what I have invented. The patent attorney understands the invention and writes it down in claims. Claim 1 onwards. And the claim 1 would actually be the main claim, which would describe the grunt of the whole or the crux of the whole invention. And all other claims will be dependent on claim 1 going forward. So the most critical part of a patent is nothing but what you write on a piece of paper with illustrations, diagrams, working methods, and so on and so forth. That fully constitutes as one patent. Unless your claim drafting is perfect, it's not going to take us any further. Because if your claim is too narrow, but your actual invention is broader than what you put on the claim, if someone copies it, you've got a narrower claim written on a piece of paper than what you actually invented. You cannot sue a person. Exactly. At the same time, if your claim is too broad and instead you have your invention which is only this much, then it is very easy to knock off your claim by a person who wants to say this is too widespread, it is not what it is. So to find the path on the left and the right on what is perfect is something you need to invest a lot of time on. Because filing a patent is not the start. It is actually a precursor to a long journey. My last slide will say why. But filing a patent might be motivated by many reasons. Some of you might think my investor wants to have a checkbox which says, have you filed a patent? I wanted to say yes, therefore I filed the patent. That is one of the many reasons. It might be true, it might be workable, but the variety of reasons one needs to file a patent is understanding how to work it. A patent can be used aggressively as a weapon. A patent can be used defensively as a shield. When someone comes and knocks on your door, you can say, well, I have a patent, therefore mine is unique. But the patent law in the last few years has developed. If two persons have two simultaneous patents, one can still sue the other. The reason is multifold, and one main reason is trademarks is a right to exclude, is an exclusive right where you can exclusively use it. In a patent, you as a patent holder can exclude everyone including another patent holder. But in a trademark, if two persons have the same trademark registered, one cannot sue the other. So it's a complex situation. Let me not deep delve this and make this into a law class right now and scare you all to not get into patent system. But broadly speaking, the reasons are many. It can be used offensively, it can be used defensively, it can be used only to please your potential investors also, with no further purpose of what I'm going to do with the patent. So next comes designs. We will deep delve into patents in a short bit. Designs, as I mentioned, have nothing to do with functionality. It has nothing to do with function. In fact, on the contrary, if a design is functional, it cannot be registered. A design is to do with how a particular product looks, not performs or functions. I hope you understand the difference. No matter what shape this collar mic is, it will still have a function. It can be in the shape of a bar, it can be in the shape of a pen, it can be in the shape of a flower. This small little blob here, that's the looks of it. So the looks of the product is more to do with appeal to the customer to attract and look at it. It need not be so in most of your examples or all the products you are making. But if I need to go shopping for this handheld device and there are 20 of them lined up next to each other and all have the same function, what comes to the differentiator are two things. Either the brand, because I know that the quality is going to be good from that particular brand, and secondly, it looks damn good. I have something which is shaped so differently that I'm going to buy it for the shape of it. So design is aesthetics. I have not used the word aesthetics here, but it's appeal to the eye and judged solely by the eye. It is not functional. If it is functional, it cannot be registered, and it can be two-dimensional or three-dimensional. For example, the design on your shirt which has got stripes, it's a two-dimensional design. The designer of that shirt can actually say, I created this design which was not existing before, therefore I'm going to get it registered, or any other product for that matter as well. So let me just pause here and tell you one critical thing which is possibly not on the slide. Apart from trademarks, design and patents, if you display it to the world before you apply, you are killing it. It's flushing it down the drain. So when you look at it in the previous product, new and non-existing. So the short point I am trying to make is seasoned companies like VTM, which was the brand owner of Preeti, and seasoned companies of repeated natures, of established companies, make the basic mistake of letting out these inventions before they are actually filed as applications. Brands, I have no problem. The more you use it, the better it is protectable. So you can launch it even without filing trademark applications, I don't have a problem. But if you have a unique looking product, if you have a unique invention as a product or a process, it is absolutely critical that you keep it in your pocket till you write a patent application claim and you file a patent application, or you fill in a design form and fill it with the design office. Until then, don't even show it to your boyfriend or girlfriend. So, potential customers also not before filing an application.
So, what about potential customers with an NDA?
In a perfect,
I know a lot of guys are doing it. That is the reason I am asking the question.
so disclosure, when I say disclosure, it need not be disclosure in Facebook and social media. Disclosure is anyone beyond you and your 2 feet around you. It can be your customer. I heard someone, I'm not taking names again. Earlier today I was speaking saying that someone, big company has invested 10-12% into my company. And we are already doing a prototype. We are going to launch the product. We have filed a patent application. It's fantastic. My worry is whether the disclosure on the invention happened before or after the patent application was filed. Because if, okay, this is how it happens. If a particular product is launched, imagine it becomes a fantastic hit. You have a 1.3 billion potential customers, out of which say discount 70-80%. You have 10 million customers, out of which you have already got a market share of say 5%. Imagine the market growth you will get. And suddenly someone is going to tell you, hey, your patent application or granted patent is bad because way back in 2017 when you invented it, you sent out this mail before filing the patent application, or you disclosed it in such and such an exhibition, or you wrote a paper and published it in IIT Madras and displayed it to 100 other fellow professors and students. Therefore, this proof of you publishing it, the word publishing is very wide. It need not be publishing in social media. Can be publication means I give it to Gopal, I give it to friends, I display it in any public forum.
No, my specific question was, will an NDA protect you?
NDA will protect you from that person disclosing further, but for the purpose of patent application, it is publishing technically in the perfect world. In a perfect world. So a lot, that's gray area because there are cases to and fro. For example, if you have sent out samples to clients for giving back results to improve your technology or your product or process, that has to be after a provisional application at least. I wouldn't give out a product for testing to a potential client or a sampling client even before filing a provisional application. You can do the testing in your own labs, but if it goes beyond your controlled laboratory or controlled environment, I will say NDA is good, but it will not help you overcome the handicap or the prerequisite requirement of novelty requirement. Whether it is publication or not, it's very dangerous path to tread. Those of you who have done it, don't have nightmares tonight. There are ways of working around it as well. Because you need to have a bad customer who turns around and says, hey, you published it to me before you filed a patent application, so you cannot stop me from going. So normally all these crazy things happen when you disclose. The client is very happy, they want to go for a cost conscious source. They will go to China, they will source it, they go to Baddi in Himachal, source it, whatever they want to do. But they will say, you didn't tell me that you have a patent application before disclosing it to me. You might have an NDA, but what happens if one breaches an NDA? We will come to that slide, but I will answer that question right away. If someone were to breach an NDA agreement, you know what will happen? What is going to happen? You give me a some answer. Guess. You and I sign an NDA. You give me some confidential information. I go and give this confidential information to Gopal tonight. I have breached the NDA with you. What will happen? Exactly. Both of you are right. The penalty clause is there. You can ask for damages, but the harm is done. You lose everything. If confidentiality clauses and NDAs are only gentlewomen clauses, that I believe you, you believe me, we disclose it in confidence. But at this end of the day, it has to be a character analysis of whether the person is going to break your confidence or not. That's why we have a concept called provisional application. A provisional application is where you know you've got 60, 70% or 80% coverage of what your concept is. And at that point of time, at a conceptual stage, you will possibly do a search for a patent. I have slides on that. And understand the entire industry mapping. That I forgot what industry you are in. Lithium batteries. So if you were to go and search for patents around lithium batteries, you will see 1,000 dots around lithium batteries. And then you will see possibly covers and sealants for lithium batteries or components for lithium batteries. And in that entire patent mapping, you will understand where you fit in. Then you will go back to the thinking board to tweak your product, right? Once you know what your core invention is, you are sure that no one is near you, because you might be thinking that it's an invention. Unless you do a patent search or freedom to operate search, you will not know how many persons are sitting around claiming that they have done something in lithium. So that's called patent mapping. To know what the industry is doing, whether it is in Hong Kong, Taiwan, China, wherever they are doing lithium battery research. At that point of time, when you are sure that your core invention is not covered by any other patent, you can file a provisional patent and keep improving it until you are sure. You can then go ahead and file your final specification. For that, you have a period of 12 months